like to present Duvi.
Where is he?
Original Savyat and the founder of the Yeshiva, Blazer Borzelitz. Blazer founded the yeshiva close to 150 years ago. The yeshiva, as we heard, grew and flourished. It survived the First World War, then the Second World War, crossed the Atlantic, and then replanted on these shores. I can only imagine the nachas that Blazer has looking down to Riverdale, watching how the yeshiva is flourishing. The Asmada, the Midas Toivis, the Yerushalayim. As the hundreds of Talmidim have left the yeshiva, they are being marbits turn across the globe. And I try to envision in my mind's eye how a Blazer is smiling at Duvi and saying, Shkoyach of Duvi, Shkoyach for helping my yeshiva, Shkoyach for keeping my legacy alive.
Are you videoing it?
First, I hope everyone understands that Moshe and I live very far away from each other. And from far away, everything looks a lot better than it is. So, just take it easy. Firstly, I would like to thank everyone for coming. I know it's not easy to schlep so far, and it's a very big tircha. I also know it is not for anything other than to express your akor satayv to the yeshiva and honor the ones who deserve it most. Their Rosh Yeshiva, their Abbeim, the chairman, and of course my dear Chaver, Reb Nosson Joseph. I also have to give a special thanks to my close friend Moshe Menlowitz for pushing me to do this. Although I know he did it out of revenge for me pushing him to do it last year, but still, Magalgun Schus al Yedei Zagai, and you have to give him thanks. The truth is, I'm really not sure why I'm standing here now. On the plane last night, my wife and I were discussing how it came about that with everything going on in our lives, business and personal, we ended up traveling 3,000 miles to be here tonight. To be clear, in all honesty, I never agreed to accept this award. As it happened, one night, I was in New York and got a call from the Rosh Yeshiva inviting me for dinner. I figured, optimistically and a bit narcissistic, the Rosh Yeshiva might want to discuss an issue and hear one of my wonderful eitzes. Or pessimistically, he wanted something from me, something I probably couldn't afford, as it is usually the case. I thought, either way, what a perfect opportunity it would be to enjoy some alone time with the Rosh Yeshiva and their Rebbetzin. I came to the Rosh Yeshiva's house and very quickly realized that this was not a social visit at all. The Rebbetzin prepared a scrumptious 5-course dinner, which I assumed was there to keep me busy eating and not argue about getting involved in this year's dinner. The Rosh Yeshiva explained why I must do this for the yeshiva, and I explained why I must not. The Rebbetzin, in her most gracious way, brought out one course after another while we argued. When I got up to leave, as we seemed to be done, the Rebbetzin came up with this bright idea that we need to have tea and some homemade biscuits. Anything to keep me long enough to say yes. Over tea, I halfway capitulated, saying, I can't make this decision alone and need to speak to my Ezer Kenegler, thinking she would certainly, as always, be my Ezer and not my Kenegler. The Rosh Yeshiva said, of course, you're 100% right. You need to ask your wife, and in fact, I'm going to ask her myself. Well, the Rosh Yeshiva called her and told her what a schus it would be for us if since we have a daughter in Shidduchim, it would be a real segula if we accepted. I mean, surely this is something the Rosh Yeshiva saw in some Kisvei Arizal. It didn't take a whole dinner, no big speeches, didn't even take 2 minutes, and she was convinced. She accepted graciously. How much easier life would be for the Rosh Yeshiva if you ran a Beis Yaakov. So really, my wife should be standing here speaking as she is the one who accepted. It is only because, in fact, the Yeshiva's skula did pan out, as my daughter Baruch Hashem did get engaged shortly after. Thank you. I figured the least I can do is participate. I now know two things. Never take the Rosh Hashiva's Avtachas lightly. In fact, last year's honoree, Moshe, had a baby shortly after the dinner. I also know never ever agree to a harmless dinner with the Rosh Hashiva and Rebbetzin again. Rishus, the Rosh Hashiva, my choshev appearance, and Rabbeim, kol hakol HaKodesh hazeh. Kavod, the word honor, has the same letters as kovet, which means burden and responsibility. In fact, the Rambam, in explaining the difference between kibbud aveim and moira aveim, says that kibbud is to feed your parents, clothe your parents, and serve them the way a servant serves his master. Moira is not to sit in their seat, not call them by their name, etc., etc. Kibbud, honoring your parents, is being responsible for their well-being. It's that burden of responsibility that is in essence honoring them. So when someone feels the burden of the yeshiva, he's actually honoring it. Burden and responsibility can of course mean financially, as Chazal say, "Yemein kemach ein Torah." But there is much more to carrying the burden of being an alumnus of Riverdale. 2 weeks ago, I had the zchus to spend Shabbos in Flatbush, where one of our good chaverim, Matis Friedman, was making an eifruf. Another close friend, Heshi Schlosser, who unfortunately couldn't make it here tonight, told me to come by his house early Shabbos morning, and maybe we could learn together a bit before davening. I was expecting to learn with him some Chumash Rashi, maybe an Orach Chaim HaKadosh or two, but as I walked into his house, I was shocked to find him poured over Sefer Chem de Shlomo. He started asking me questions about chazakas and steers between different sugyas and shas, about Tarti L'Reisa. I tell you, I was completely shocked. How many Balabatim would be up at 7 a.m. the one day they can catch on some sleep? Where does a Balabas have the mindset to harva on a Shver Chem de Shlomo any day of the week, let alone Shabbos morning at 7 a.m.? This was ingrained into us in yeshiva by the Rabbeim and Rosh Hashiva. The Rosh Hashiva taught us what it means to be a Riverdale Bocher, and that burden and responsibility we carry for the rest of our lives. As we all know, the majority of Riverdale Bocherim stay in some form of Klei Kodesh. The yeshiva's goal, the Rosh Hashiva's goal, is to create and form Mechanchim, Rosh Yeshivas, Rosh Kohelim, and ultimately the next generation of Gedolim and Manhigim. A very small fraction of us are Balabatim. But I'm proud to say that we are all not Stam Balabatim. We are Yeshivalite that unfortunately weren't Zoiche to stay in Koslei HaYeshiva and went out into the world to make a parnasa. When we understand what that means and carry it around as a burden, we are in fact honoring the yeshiva and its rabbeim. Rav Hutner, in Igros Michtavim, in response to a younger man who was leaving yeshiva and looking for chizik, writes a beautiful mashal. He writes, when a kettle of water is on the fire, it bubbles and smokes. It's impossible to measure how much water is in the pot. The bubbles create an illusion that there is more water than there really is. It's only when you take the pot off the fire can you actually measure how much water there really is. So too with the younger man. As long as he's in yeshiva, says Rav Hutner, on the fire, you don't really know what he's about, how much of a Ben Torah he truly really is. It's only after he leaves yeshiva, he's no longer on the fire, can you clearly see what he's really made of. I can proudly say that the Riverdale Balabatim are a cut above the rest. I once saw in a book from a famous maskil in Vilna who learned in Navardik Before leaving Navardik, the Alta told him that no matter how far he drifts away from Yiddishkeit, one thing Navardik instilled in him is that he would never be able to enjoy an Aver. He said, and he wrote this, that throughout his entire life this remained true. He unfortunately never did tshuva, but also never enjoyed any peace in life, always remembering he was once a Navardik Talmud. We alumni in Riverdale still shiver when we hear the word El. We still have a hard time smiling during the 3 weeks. We know what it means to be a real yeshiva man. We understand that Torah is supreme and Talmidei Chachamim are on a different level than the rest of us. We truly appreciate that all that tzedakah and chesed a person can do does not come to the toes of someone answering one tzarachin in a kivega. And if we cannot harva over a shver or ashva, we need to support those that can and do that. The burden on us is to support Torah. Not many appreciate it. Let us leave those who didn't go to Riverdale